Good morning. I'm going to read from Goodbye to All That by Robert Graves. Robert Graves, of course, was a very famous British poet, mostly, but he wrote a lot of other books too, and this is one of his autobiographies, maybe the only one, I'm not sure. I read this in college, and it had a huge impact on me at the time. He was also one of the characters in Pat Barker's trilogy, the Regeneration trilogy that I read from earlier. So this part that I'm going to read comes from his experience as a soldier in World War I, chapter 14. With the advance of summer came new types of bombs and trench mortars, heavier shelling, improved gas masks, and a general tightening up of discipline. We met the first battalions of the new army and felt like scarecrows by comparison. Our battalion went in and out of the Cambrin and Quincy trenches with billets in Bethune and the neighboring villages. By this time I had caught the pessimism of the 1st Division. Its spirit in the trenches was largely defensive, the idea being not to stir the Germans into more than their usual hostility. But casualties remained very heavy for trench warfare. Pessimism made everyone superstitious, and I found myself believing in signs of the most trivial nature. Sergeant Smith, my second sergeant, told me of the officer who had commanded the platoon before I did. He was a nice gentleman, sir, but very wild. Just before the Rue du Bois show, he says to me, "By the way, Sergeant, I'm going to get killed tomorrow. I know that, and I know that you're going to be all right. So see that my kit goes back to my people. You'll find their address in my pocketbook. You'll find 500 francs there, too. Now remember this, Sergeant Smith. You keep 100 francs yourself and divide up the rest among the chaps left." He says, "Send my pocketbook back with the other stuff, Sergeant Smith, but for God's sake, burn my diary. They mustn't see that. I'm going to get it here." He points to his forehead, and that's how it was. He got it through the forehead all right, and I sent the stuff back to his parents. I divided up the money, and I burned the diary. One day, walking along a trench at Cambrin, I suddenly dropped flat on my face. 2 seconds later, a whiz-bang struck the back of the trench exactly where my head had been. The sergeant who was with me, walking a few steps ahead, turned around. "Are you killed, sir?" The shell was fired from a battery near Le Brick Farm, only 1,000 yards away, so that I must have reacted almost simultaneously with the explosion of the gun. How did I know that the shell was coming my way? At Bethune, I saw the ghost of a man named Private Challoner, who had been at Lancaster with me and again in F Company at Wrexham. When he went out with a draft to join the 1st Battalion, he shook my hand and said, "I'll meet you again in France, sir." In June, he passed by our C Company billet, where we were just having a special dinner to celebrate our safe return from Quincy. New potatoes, fish, green peas, asparagus, mutton chops, strawberries and cream, and 3 bottles of Pommard. Private Challoner looked in at the window, saluted, and passed on. I could not mistake him or the cap badge he wore, yet no Royal Welch battalion was billeted within miles of Bethune at the time. I jumped up, looked out the window, and saw nothing except a fag end smoking on the pavement. Challoner had been killed at Festubert in May. Robert Graves, Goodbye to All That. Have a great day, everyone.